Here's the definition of a magazine: print periodical containing miscellaneous pieces and often illustrated. And by the way, such a periodical published online is also a magazine, according to these folks. A magazine is a way to spend leisure time reading and viewing content selected by someone with a consistent point of view. Printed magazine is easily transportable, saved, and shared. It is usually published monthly or weekly with a lead time that is sold primarily on a subscription basis. I think that's a nice definition. Here's an old one. 1909, Scribner's. Teddy Roosevelt, when he went to Africa on a safari, wrote an article. The word magazine evidently comes from an Arabic word, makazin, which supposedly means storehouse. So a magazine is a storehouse for lots of different kinds of information, text, and pictures. Here are another few old magazine covers. I don't know if you folks know now, the Saturday Evening Post was a very popular weekly magazine, 20th century, earlier part of the 20th century. Beautiful photographs and illustrations, interesting articles about lifestyle types of things mostly. And you can see, if you look closely, who did the artwork on the cover. An American artist named Norman Rockwell, who you may have heard of. Very collectible for those who like to collect Americana. And in fact, every painting he did, he actually posed accurately and drew what he saw. So this was this little girl here and all these things he put together before he painted them. And then on the right we have the famous Time magazine, which was a weekly news magazine, again begun in the early parts of the 20th century by someone named Henry Luce, L-U-C-E, founded the Time magazine company. Very influential publication. Again, came out weekly. And in the case of Time, not so much lifestyle stories, but kind of news analysis stories is what Time magazine was famous for. And the company, Saturday Evening Post, went out of business some time ago. Time magazine ended up becoming a real colossus of magazine publishing, and eventually published titles like Life magazine and Sports Illustrated and Fortune magazine. And then in the I want to say early 70s, launched People magazine. Time magazine still exists, and we'll talk about it later, but the company itself has been pretty much picked apart. Magazines have gone to different magazine companies that have ended up being more successful in the long run than Time. We have looked at this chart once or twice. I think we did it a couple of lectures ago. This gives ad spending from 2017 and projected to 2021 by Medium in billions. The blue bar charts there are 2017, and then the black are what's projected for 2021. You can see magazines are projected to be fairly flat, and this is ad spending, and they really have been going down. The trend for magazine ad spending is definitely down. Readership, subscriptions, etc., just as is the case with newspapers. So these printed media types that you hold in your hands and read are kind of going away, I would say. They're building an online presence, but that's where they are. Now this is a lot of mice type, a lot of small type. I found this a year or two ago when I was pulling things together on magazines. This actually is content from the trade association for magazines. Every media type has its own trade association, or sometimes more than one. You remember for out of home, it was the Outdoor Advertising Association of America, the OAAA.org. Also the DPAA, the Digital Place-Based Media Association. For magazines, it used to be called the MPA. And I pulled this content a year or two ago, and this is just a list of kind of factoids, trying to make the point that there is vitality, there's a good audience, there's younger people read magazines, 91% of adults read print magazines, all the new print magazines being started, all the titles that were there. So this is all a bunch of factoids from the Magazine Publishers Association. Here's their website. We'll just take a quick look here. Well, the Association of Magazine Media. And the purpose of the MPA is to market magazines to advertisers, to represent magazines in Washington if there should be any legal issues about it. Here they've got a meeting coming up. Stop that. And the Hearst Tower. You remember we talked about the Hearst Tower when we talked about William Randolph Hearst and his newspaper business. And Citizen Kane. Hearst Tower's right here in New York. And here you see how they're marketing. They're showing how people are using magazines and how great magazines are. And there's a lot of good information. Of course, they're selling print and online, right? If you can't beat them, join them. And a lot of things to look at. And normally, these associations are run by all the interested parties. So the members will be clients who use a lot of magazines, advertisers, companies, the brands that use a lot of magazines. They're the advertising agencies that buy the magazines, and then they're the publishers, the people who own, companies that own and publish the magazines are all members of the association. Now let's see if we can get off of here and go back to our presentation. That's the MPA, the role of the trade association. Okay, so normally in my live class, when I do the talk about magazines, I ask every student to bring a magazine, hopefully something that they like, even though they may not subscribe to it. Is it something that they pick up and look at? And I often ask students who wish to volunteer and come up in front of the class and answer some of these questions, kind of have their magazine with them and sort of show it. We kind of page through it. We all basically kind of think through what it's like to experience a magazine that we like. What's it like to read a magazine? Well, here we are. We're the audience. What's it like? And you are going to do that, by the way. You will be doing a My Media Journey in MMJ with magazines. Well, here are some of the questions for us then to think about. And maybe you could take a minute now, wherever you are, and stop this and go get a magazine somewhere. Maybe your roommate has one. Maybe you've got one sitting around. Maybe you can find one somewhere nearby. And just ask yourself these questions. Why do you pick it up? Why do you read it? How do you read it? Do you look at the table of contents and read specific content only? Many people, I can tell you with Vogue magazine, who are into fashion, will read it from cover to cover. They're as interested in the ads as they are in the content. How long do you keep it? Do you have stacks of magazines like my ex-wife all over the apartment that you just can't bear to throw away? Or do you pass it on to someone else to look at it? So who else reads it? And then ask yourself, what ads do you notice and why do you notice them? What makes you stop and read an ad? Does the magazine naturally open to a certain point and there's an ad? Do some ads have a thicker paper stock so that you sort of have to stop there or open it there? Or do they have a coupon that stands out, an inserted coupon that makes you turn to the page with the ad? Where in the magazine are you more likely to notice an ad? Remember, we've talked already about positioning in the magazine, how it's very easy for an ad to be overlooked or not looked at all in a magazine. So where do you need to be in the magazine to have your best chance of being noticed? And then I would ask at this point, how many people in class have had a PR class here? And I know we've got some very good PR classes here at FIT, public relations. So what do we know about unpaid or earned content in magazines? And there can be a lot of it. How do you get it? Is it valuable? How valuable is it? Why is print a good medium for direct response? Is there a corresponding website for the magazine you're holding? And if so, do you use the website in addition to reading the magazine? How do the magazine and the website relate to each other? So it is possible to target demographics with magazines by age, by gender, by profession, by hobby. Lots of ways to target magazines. By the way, you can also target magazines geographically. So there are local magazines. Most cities have a city magazine, Detroit magazine, New York magazine, Time Out magazine of Chicago. You can also buy, in national magazines, you can have your ad only appear in certain geographies. There are special companies. Time magazine had a subsidiary called MNI, Media Networks International, that was set up specifically for that, to sell regional and local and city editions of Time Inc.'s magazines to people who just wanted to be in that city. Condé Nast has the same thing. Here are some categories of magazines. High circulation, low cost per thousand. By the way, one of the highest circulation magazines happens to be the AARP magazine that you get if you join the AARP. Everyone gets the magazine. There have traditionally been these women's magazines. They're called women's service magazines. Your mother or your grandmother may have gotten these. Magazines like Red Books and Ladies' Home Journal and Good Housekeeping. These were traditionally magazines that package goods companies, Tide detergent, Duncan Hines cake mix, and Crest toothpaste used to supplement their TV buys. Shelter magazines are about, like Architectural Digest, they're about houses and decorating. Special interest can be very targeted by hobby. And then there are, of course, B2B magazines or magazines published for specific business readers, I should say. Here are a couple of special interest magazines. Here's an edition of National Geographic that's for kids. Here's a magazine called Outside that's about people who like to hike and bike and do things outside. Here's another special interest for people who want to diet. And here's a real special interest one, which I understand is a pretty hot magazine. You see the topic is skateboarding. I've had students in my classes who have subscribed to Thrasher. I think it's pretty cool. It's a lifestyle brand. It's very cutting edge. If you like skateboarding and you're into it. And then, as we saw in our earlier definition of magazines, the website, companion website to the printed magazine is also a magazine. Anything with magazine content is a magazine. And this is New York Magazines. This is one of their sites for New York Magazine. So before we talk about buying magazines, I'm just going to stop here and we'll start that topic in a new recording.